I'm Maggie and I'm here to do my July 2024 reading wrap up. So I read 12 books in the month of July. That is a lot for me, but I was out of school. I didn't have work during July. So that's why I read so much. I did DNF 3 books. So we'll talk about that too. First, I read Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Malors. I had this book sitting on my Kindle for about a year, and I finally wanted to read it because I know Blue Sisters is coming out in the fall sometime. So I picked it up and I had mixed feelings. So Cleopatra and Frankenstein is about a young woman who gets married to an older man. I think he's about 20 or so years older than her. And she does this because she loves him and he loves her, but also because she needs a green card to stay in England, I'm pretty sure. So the book is about how their marriage plays out and the power imbalance and weird dynamics between them. This is very much a vibes book. Not much happens. I had heard it's kind of like Sally Rooney, who I hadn't read until this month, August, so I'll talk about that in my August wrap up. It is kind of like Sally Rooney. I don't think it's as good as Sally Rooney. So I didn't really know if I liked it. And then at the end, after I finished, I found myself still thinking about it and about certain parts. I ended up giving it 4 stars, a soft 4 stars. Yeah. That's what I thought about Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I'm going to talk about the next 2 books together. So I read The Cost of Living and Real Estate by Deborah Levy. These are the second and third books in Deborah Levy's Living Autobiography series. What can I say that hasn't been said? I loved these books. My sister read them and she loved them, and it felt really special to share it with her. Also because these books talk a lot about Deborah Levy's feelings on writing and her divorce and being middle-aged and all kinds of the fun stuff that I absolutely love to read about. But she does talk about her mom a little bit in these books, and my sister and I lost our mom earlier this year. So this was one of the first books I think I'd read since then that kind of touched on the topic of daughters talking about their moms, and it felt very special. Very, very, very special. Some of the things she talks about, like realizing that your mom is a whole person and all the things that she feels and doesn't tell you. Oh gosh, it makes me want to cry thinking about it. I loved Real Estate. I think that was my favorite one because she talks a lot about her imaginary dream real estate and house in her mind and things that she wants to have in it, but at the time she can't because she's in an apartment. She's so real. Like, I'm getting out of breath because I'm talking about Deborah Levy too much. Then a very different book, I read The Drawing of the Three. This is the second book in Stephen King's Dark Tower series. So I'm rereading these with my fiance. He's never read them before. It's just a great time. I love it. The Drawing of the Three, though, is my least favorite book. This is the weakest book of the 7. You have to just push through because The Wastelands, the third book, is my second favorite of the series, and things really pick up there, so you just have to push through The Drawing of the Three. Okay, then I read The Beast You Are by Paul Tremblay. This is Paul Tremblay's, not his most recent book that's come out, but his second most recent. I love the cover. It's a book of short stories. And the only other Paul Tremblay that I've read is Growing Things, which was another short story collection, and I loved it. It was one of my favorite books that I read last year. So many of the short stories in that book touched me and scared me, and this book, The Beast You Are, it was not like that. I thought a lot of the stories were boring or weak in different ways. A criticism I had that a lot of other people had on Storygraph was that a lot of his stories feature characters from his novels that I haven't read and I don't care about. So it is what it is. There were a few stories that I liked in here, but the majority, not for me. This one I did read a physical copy. I own this, but it's at my house because I read it already. I read The Woman Destroyed by Simone de Beauvoir. This was my first Simone de Beauvoir book, and I adored it. I give it 5 stars. So this book is 3 different stories about women in serious transitions or moments of crisis in their lives. One is about a woman who realizes that her husband is having an affair. One is about, my favorite one, is about a woman who is just spiraling, and it's so stream of consciousness and so intense. I was very affected by this story. She's spiraling because you find out her daughter passed away, and she has so many complicated feelings about it, and she's not a good person, and she's having a lot of angry thoughts and sad thoughts, and it's just like one of the most powerful things I've ever read. So I read that. That's also the shortest story in this collection of 3 stories. So I finished it and I thought, let me learn more about her, Miss de Beauvoir. And she's not a great person. I won't get into what I read about her, but if you do a quick Google, you'll find out she had some very upsetting views and did some upsetting things. Gross and upsetting, because her writing is gorgeous and I want to read more, and I'm having this conflict that we have all the time as readers about an art monster, as it's come to be called, where you don't like the person and you don't like who they were and what they believed, but you feel compelled by their writing and you don't want to completely dismiss the art because of the artist. So I'm having a lot of thoughts about that. The girls are thinking, the girls in my head are thinking. Anyways, then I read Disoriental by Negar Javadi. I ended up giving this 3 stars. So I read this for Sunbeams Jess's book club, and it was so fun to read it and read what people were saying on Discord about it. I wasn't a huge fan. So this was actually the book that got me into the library, because I was looking around thinking about buying an ebook, thinking about buying the physical copy, and somebody in the group said, just see if your library has it. And my library had it right away, and I just downloaded the ebook, and then I was obsessed with the library ever since. This book, I mean, it was interesting. It just wasn't really for me. I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't connect with it that much. It's about a family from Iran, and a bunch of members of the family, and some of them moved to France for political reasons. They have a lot of stuff going on. I'm not even gonna try and get into it because it's so much. A lot happens in this book. And the main character is telling this story while she's waiting in the waiting room of a fertility clinic. We don't know why she's there. We know that it's not for a conventional reason because she talks about that. I was way more interested in the current storyline with her waiting in the fertility clinic, and I found myself being upset when it would switch back and forth. So we'd get right to a crucial part in the fertility clinic storyline, and then it would go 30 or so years back to when she was a kid and talk about that, and I didn't love that. Like, I thought it felt kind of disjointed. But I did give it 3 stars because there were things I liked about it. Then I read Brat by Gabrielle Smith, and I rated it 3 stars. I'm going to bump it down to 2 stars, unfortunately. I read this for Sunny's Book Club by CJ, and I have been doing this book club since January. I have so much fun. At the first of the month, I'm waiting for her to post what the new book is. So excited for next month, by the way. What you do with that book club, by the way, is you pay $30 and you get the book and you get access to the Discord and the book club meeting. And I've only gotten to go to one because I've been busy every time we've had them. But it's just a lot of fun, and she picks great books. This one didn't resonate with me for different reasons. This book is about a guy who ends up moving into his family home and he has to sell it. It's kind of a haunted house, weird things start happening, lots of body horror happening, which I don't love, And I knew that going into it, but I don't like it. The thing I didn't like about this book was how it was written. So it's written in very short chapters, which I love a short chapter if the writing is good. Then I read My Death by Lisa Tuttle. This was also for Sunbeam's Jess's book club. I loved this. I gave it 5 stars. I don't want to spoil too much. I think this is a great book to go into not knowing a lot. It's about a woman who starts getting obsessed with this kind of forgotten female artist and muse and ends up finding her and interviewing her, and weird stuff starts happening. It's such a short book. I read it in a day. I think almost everybody who reads it devours it in a day. And these New York Review Books copies, I'm obsessed. I had Stoner in this copy and I gave it to my sister, but whoever designed these needs a big raise. So the last 3 books I talked about in my July reading vlog, so I won't go into them too in depth. I read Authority by Jeff Vandermeer. This is the 2nd book in the Southern Reach series. It was a trilogy, but now a 4th book, a prequel, is coming out, I think in the fall. So I read Annihilation maybe 4 years ago and loved it. And then I tried to read Authority. Didn't like it, put it down. But knowing that a new book was coming out, I thought, I have all 3, I need to read them. So I did. I gave this 4 stars. I liked it a lot better this time. It's very bureaucratic and governmental and not at all like Annihilation. You're not in the Southern Reach for this one, but it's interesting. And it sets you up for the 3rd book, which I'm still trying to put my thoughts together on. I don't know how I feel about the 3rd book, but I do like this one. I do like this one a lot. The last 2 books I got from the library and I took them back, and I did talk about them in my July reading vlog. I read The Story of Art Without Men by Katie Hessel. I gave this 5 stars. It's a book about art history and all the women artists that a lot of them have been forgotten. A lot of them are pretty popular, but a lot of them I had never heard of. I found so many new artists that I'm interested in, and I still have a bunch of tabs up on my phone of artists and prints that I saw in this book and want to buy. Then I read The Book of Ein by Lexi Freeman. I gave this 4 stars. I was not expecting to love this book, but I loved it. It's a satire about a woman who writes a satire about the opioid epidemic in America, and the New York Times calls her classist and she gets canceled. It is such a funny, smart book, and a lot of it I feel like went over my head, but the parts that I managed to grasp onto, I just really thought this was a fun book. I would recommend it. Even if you don't know a lot about Ayn Rand, I didn't know a lot about her, but this book gives you a lot to think about. I have conflicting feelings about the second half, but I would definitely recommend it. I thought this was great. Really quickly, I like when people talk about their DNFs, so I'll talk about my 3 really fast. I talked about in my July reading vlog. I read the first page of Boulder by Eva Baltazar, and it wasn't the right style for me at the time. I didn't slip into it the way I like to get like immediately pulled in by a book that I start, so I took it back to the library. I did DNF Throne of Glass. Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I don't really want to talk about this. I thought that Selena is super annoying. I don't like characters like her that are, what's that word that's like really sarcastic and not quirky. I don't know. I can't think of the word. It's like, I hate this, like spunky, really like kind of mean. It's still on my Kindle. Whatever. I ended up DNFing The Books of Jacob by Olga Tokarczuk. I agonized over this book all summer because Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead is one of my all-time favorite books by this author. I wish I loved it so much. The idea sounds very cool. It's about a real life prophet or false prophet that existed hundreds of years ago, and he's all throughout the Middle East and different countries and 3 different religions. It talks about Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. I love books about different social systems and different religions and stuff like that, but I just did not connect with this. It was way way too big for me in terms of scope. So many characters, and apparently, I didn't get this far, but they all changed their names when they switched to different religions, so I just couldn't keep up with it. I think she's a great writer, and I definitely want to try Flights and her new book that's coming out this fall. But I finally had to put this one down because I don't have a lot of time for reading, as much time as I would like, and I can't make myself spend a lot of time on a book that I'm not enjoying. Even though I'm sure it's a great book, it just wasn't for me right now. That's my July wrap up, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that I see you very soon. Thanks for watching.